Welcome to Stories from the NNI. I'm Lisa Friedersdorf, Director of the National Nanotechnology Coordination Office. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome Christy Kick, the Blue and Gold Distinguished Professor of Material Science and Engineering at the University of Delaware. Christy, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you get us started by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in nanotechnology?
Sure. Thanks, Lisa, for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm really delighted to be able to join you on your podcast. I got involved in nanotechnology only more recently in my career as a faculty member. I started undergraduate studies at the University of Delaware, where I am currently a faculty member, but in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry. So I received my undergraduate degree in chemistry and became interested in questions around proteins and biological macromolecules. I studied in graduate school enzyme activity and trying to understand how the orientation and coordination of amino acid side chains to metals could control enzyme activity, and then ended up through a series of circumstances working as a research scientist at Kimberly-Clark Corporation in Roswell, Georgia, where I was exposed firsthand and for the first time to questions around commodity polymers and how they could be really useful as platforms for making consumer products. So as a result of those kind of series of exposures and experiences, I developed an interest in the use of biopolymers in materials applications. So I quit my job at Kimberly-Clark Corporation and started graduate studies at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, where I was interested in learning about the bacterial synthesis of polypeptides and how those polypeptides could be chemically modified by engineering the bacterial host to incorporate amino acids that aren't normally found in nature into the polypeptides that the bacteria make. And as a result of that set of training, I ended up in a material science and engineering department where my group has been studying questions around how to use polypeptides as materials now for almost 20 years.
Wow. So you mentioned the polypeptide materials and also, you referred to them as biopolymers. Is this also what is sometimes called protein-based materials? And can you talk a little bit about some of the applications of these materials?
Yes, absolutely. Indeed, you're correct. Protein-based materials and polypeptides are the same classes of materials. Protein-based materials can be manufactured or formulated using proteins that exist in nature and purifying those proteins and then fashioning them into different types of materials. One can also engineer bacterial hosts so that they can synthesize those materials that nature synthesizes, but that you would then synthesize in cell culture. Or one can go even further and borrow some of the known sequences from naturally occurring structural proteins and engineer them into long repetitive sequences, then express those materials and fashion them into a range of different types of gels or fibers or nanoparticles.
I wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk about the makeup of your lab and your students and your postdocs, and really the concept of interdisciplinarity. What is your view and what does your team look like with respect to the discipline makeup?
I am in a material science and engineering department, so our graduate students will come from all sorts of different scientific backgrounds, ranging from physics, chemistry, chemical engineering, polymer chemistry, but that provides an interdisciplinarity even within the context of how people approach problems. That's really helpful when the group works together. The type of work that I do in my labs has its own sort of interdisciplinarity, and because we order on the biological side, not only of how we make our molecules, but then largely where our applications are focused. A lot of my students will come into a material science program without a background in that type of molecular biology or protein expression or biochemistry. It makes a really dynamic environment for students to be learning something new and to be bringing their discipline that isn't a perfect overlap with what their graduate studies are in, and bringing that insight into the game. So it's a really fun way to work, and a really fun way to have our group meetings and to develop ideas that sometimes are really outside of the box.
I was wondering if I could get your perspective, both looking back and looking forward. What do you feel are some of the most significant advancements that have been made in nanotechnology, and where do you think the opportunities to have an impact are in the future?
There has been an explosion of advances in nanotechnology as we've, as a scientific community, have understood more of the very fundamental principles that guide the organization of atoms and the organization of molecules. And that's part of my particular interest in proteins and polypeptides as materials. And nature encodes information in a DNA strand. That strand has chemical functionality that's pretty rich, but that's not as expansive as that in the protein toolbox. But the information that's in that DNA message in each of us in every organism gets translated into a protein sequence that, by virtue of that sequence, then that single strand protein can fold locally into different structures and then hierarchical structures across the nano and then into the micro scale. So as we as a community have understood more about that level of information in molecules of both organic and inorganic origin, it's really opened a huge range of opportunities that cross those disciplines, right? So if we consider the ability to organize small matter, whether it's inorganic, like in the case of quantum dots, or whether it's organic, like in the case of proteins and DNA, the ability then to understand those interfaces and using organic substrates as a way to organize inorganic materials, I think that that sort of synergy is where nanotechnology in the future is likely to have its largest impact. And I think that impact will span across an enormous range of disciplines. And I guess the two that are particular interest to me are advances around medicine. So if you even think about our current day exciting news around mRNA-based vaccines and the ability to stabilize the mRNA and get it delivered effectively through the use of nanotechnology in the form of liposomal materials, those technologies and advances in those technologies to help stabilize those vaccines and then enable their broad distribution by virtue of their stabilization with nanotechnology is a key thing in the future to help all countries and peoples be able to have access to necessary vaccines and medical care. When you think about advanced medicine, the ability to target therapies by virtue of their nanoscale size, their shape, or specific regions of chemical functionality that can be targeted to those shapes, that's also an enormous advance. On a personal level, I'm excited by the opportunities of nanotechnology to help address climate issues. When we think about energy and go back to quantum dot technology and the expansion of optoelectronics technology that could allow very highly efficient solar cells and the conversion of light into electricity, the control of the nanostructure of membranes to better enable efficiency in fuel cells and battery technologies, lightweight nanocomposites that would allow us to upgrade our huge macroscale materials like cars and airplanes so that our fuel efficiency can be better. I mean, I think at the heart of it all, we're all nanoscale at a level. And I think as we can harness our understanding and our ability to manipulate the nanoscale, it has huge opportunities in the years to come.
Do you have any advice that you give to your students that are interested in pursuing nanotechnology?
You know, the advice I give all my students, and this is perhaps maybe most relevant to students who have particular interests in nanotechnology, is really to follow what they're interested in and to follow advances and news in a range of different disciplines so that they can come to the table not only with the diversity of their backgrounds educationally, but also armed with knowledge from a range of different sources that can help them make creative connections, and that will help them develop new solutions to things in global society and in science. I also encourage them to tinker and to not be afraid of making mistakes and try to push the envelope a little bit so that they can make some interesting advances. And I guess in particular with nanotechnology, I also advise them to understand the tools of characterization of nanotechnology so that they're better able to see, if you will, what impact their design modifications to molecules, what that design does to the final product. So if they can understand their materials, not just from the basis of how you design an amino acid sequence and how that forms a nanostructure, but then how you confirm that nanostructure is in fact what you think you want it to make and that it is stable over different conditions. So I really encourage them to be broad thinkers.
Christy, I really enjoy you taking the time to talk with us today. Do you have any closing thoughts that you would like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, the future is bright for us to, as a global and scientific community, to really learn from one another and use advances on the nanoscale to solve really big problems. It's a rich area, lots of fun, and excited about where our scientific community will lead us in the future.
Thank you for joining us today for the stories from the NNI. If you would like to learn more about nanotechnology, please visit nano.gov or email us at info@nnco.nano.gov and check back here for more stories.